Beloved chosen one, what if everything you've lost is about to return to you, transformed and multiplied? This message found its way to you through divine orchestration. This is not coincidence. This is heavenly timing at its most perfect. You've been guided to this revelation because the universe recognizes your season of restoration has arrived. The time when silence transforms into celebration, when emptiness becomes abundance. Haven't you sensed it lately? That gentle stirring in your soul, a whisper telling you something is shifting. After all the darkness, after all the pain, something greater must be coming. I'm here to confirm it is, but understand this clearly. This isn't simply about recovering what was taken. This is about receiving exponentially more than what disappeared. Every silent tear you've shed, every relationship that dissolved without warning, every door that closed despite your qualifications. The universe has kept perfect record. Not a single moment was wasted. Not one injustice went unnoticed. When you're divinely chosen, life doesn't happen randomly. It unfolds purposefully, even when everything appears to be crumbling. Consider this question. What if your greatest losses were actually sacred investments waiting for the perfect moment to yield their return? Because that's precisely what's unfolding now. At this very moment, everything that was stripped away, your inner peace, your confidence, your opportunities, connections, and purpose, they aren't simply returning, they're being multiplied. But here's a truth rarely acknowledged. The divine doesn't rush perfection. While others believed you were being destroyed, you were actually being rebuilt. While they whispered about your failures, heaven was preparing your resurrection. And now the transformation has begun. This is beyond mere restoration. This is divine recompense. The kind that doesn't just settle old debts. It advances your destiny. Before we continue deeper into this revelation, take a meaningful action to mark this pivot point. Like this message. Subscribe to these revelations because these aren't random words. They're confirmation. And if you recognize this message speaks directly to your spirit, type 777 in the comments. Not as a number alone, but as a declaration. I am aligned with divine multiplication. Listen carefully, chosen one. Only those truly called will remain until the conclusion. This isn't entertainment, it's activation. By our journey's end, you'll understand why the suffering was necessary, why the delays were divinely orchestrated, and why what approaches next will leave even your critics speechless. Take a deep breath. Because everything that disappeared from your life is finding its way back to you. Measured out, multiplied abundantly, and overflowing beyond measure. Let us begin. Section 1. The Unseen Extractions. When darkness targets light. Chosen one. Not every battle you endured left visible scars. Some of your deepest losses came without warning signs. No alarms sounded. No witnesses stood by. No opportunity to shield yourself. They arrived silently, through smiles, through deception, in moments when your heart remained open and your defenses lowered. You see, theft doesn't always announce itself with broken windows. Sometimes it approaches with a friendly face. It speaks with honeyed words. It pretends to support you. Many of your deepest wounds were inflicted by hands you once held in trust, by voices that promised, "I'll always be here." Yet beneath those smiles, behind those empty promises, they weren't nurturing your brilliance, they were depleting it. Consider this truth. Have you noticed how those you loved most deeply often took the most from you without asking? It's not because you were foolish. It's not because you lacked discernment. It's because your spirit remained pure and authentic souls attract both the wounded and the envious. You gave freely your time, your compassion, your creative energy, because that's your essential nature. You weren't naive, you were generous, but here lies the painful reality. Not everyone comprehends true brilliance. Some individuals don't know how to receive it, so instead they attempt to possess it, to diminish it, to extract until nothing remains but shadows. And the most devastating part, it rarely appeared as theft. It manifested as friendship. It presented as family. It disguised itself as romance. It masqueraded as opportunity. Yet beneath the surface, they were extracting your vitality, your self-belief, your divine vision. You didn't lose because you were careless. You lost because you were compassionate. There exists a particular anguish when your innocence vanishes before you recognize its value, when your joy suffocates within environments too toxic to sustain life, when your aspirations collapse not through personal failure, but through the cutting words of those who questioned who gave you permission to shine. Chosen one. Some treasures stolen from you weren't tangible. They cut deeper. They were your authentic self, your inherent worthiness, your sacred voice. And then, there were the systems, the pathways that remained blocked. Not because you lacked qualification, but because you refused to compromise your essence. You were disregarded, overlooked, dismissed. Each time this occurred, a fragment of your spirit seemed to fracture, and yet you persevered. But let's address something even more insidious, more dangerous, the internal erosion. That quiet voice whispering, perhaps they're right. Maybe I am too intense. Perhaps I should diminish myself just to survive. That programming, that conditioned you to contract your light, to question your worth, because external validation never arrived. But hear this revelation clearly. Every betrayal, every silent extraction, every stolen possibility, the divine has recorded with perfect accuracy. Not one tear went unnoticed, not a single injustice escaped divine awareness. While they believed they successfully drained your essence, Spirit was accumulating interest on your suffering. They didn't merely take from you. They initiated a cosmic transaction without understanding the consequences. Because in divine law, what's extracted in darkness returns in brilliant light multiplied. Chosen one, this is your season of divine compensation. What they believed they'd quietly stolen is about to make the loudest, most magnificent return. Here's the beauty of this moment. You require no revenge. You need not justify your journey. Divine restoration speaks more eloquently than any explanation ever could. But let me pose this powerful question. Are you prepared to receive what was taken in a form so abundant it silences every doubt you've ever harbored? Because that's what approaches. This isn't merely about reclaiming your peace or retrieving opportunities. This is about stepping into a version of yourself they never anticipated. The version that's wiser through betrayal, that's stronger through loss, that's clearer through darkness. They attempted to dim your radiance, but all they accomplished was enhancing your brilliance when the divine illumination returns. So mourn no longer. What disappeared, celebrate what's being restored. And recognize this fundamental truth. The silent losses have concluded. Now comes the magnificent restoration you've awaited. Prepare yourself, for the spaces where your essence was once dishonored will soon resonate with the sound of vindication. Let them witness. Let them wonder. You owe no explanations. Your transformed existence will speak volumes. Now, let's journey deeper. Understanding the theft marks only the beginning. Next, we unveil why the delays contained purpose beyond your understanding. Section 2. Sacred delays, the divine timing. you couldn't see. Chosen one, how many nights have you whispered into darkness? Why is everything taking so long? Why does it seem everyone else advances with ease while you remain waiting? You weren't merely patient. You were desperate. You weren't simply hoping. You were clinging to the last threads of faith. Nights spent praying until tears replaced words, days masking heartache behind brave smiles and still silence. Pathways remained blocked. Dreams withered on the vine. Heaven seemed deaf to your pleas. Let me pose a question that might transform everything you've believed. What if the silence wasn't rejection, but protection? We've been conditioned to interpret delay as denial, to believe that if manifestation hasn't occurred yet, it must not belong to us. But that's not how sacred timing operates. When you're divinely chosen, your life doesn't follow conventional timelines. You move according to celestial blueprints. And sometimes the universe whispers, "Not yet." Not because you're unworthy, but because what approaches is too magnificent to be rushed. Consider this: the most enduring structures in existence, those withstanding centuries of storms, earthquakes, and corrosion, aren't constructed overnight. They require time, because they're designed for legacy and chosen one. What the divine is crafting within you isn't temporary achievement. It's not fleeting recognition. It's an eternal imprint, a foundation. No person, no institution, no adversity can destabilize. But here emerges the challenge: watching others receive while you wait in stillness, seeing those of lesser integrity celebrated, witnessing doors open for those who haven't sacrificed, prayed, or endured your trials. And you question, have I been forgotten? Why them instead of me? But receive this profound truth. Delay never signifies divine negligence. It represents divine protection and sacred preparation. Many doorways you desperately sought to enter would have collapsed under your destiny's weight. Many individuals you longed to build alongside had foundations too unstable to support your vision. That opportunity you mourned when it passed, it was beneath your divine assignment. The divine wasn't punishing you. It was preserving you, protecting you from environments incapable of sustaining your gifts, shielding you from connections that would have drained your purpose, keeping you from platforms inadequately built for the magnitude of your offering. Consider another perspective. If your prayers had been answered when initially requested, would you have possessed the capacity to steward the blessing? Be ruthlessly honest. Sometimes delay occurs not because you lack value, but because what approaches requires a matured, healed, fortified version of yourself. You weren't being overlooked. You were being refined. For chosen vessels aren't fashioned in public view. They're shaped in sacred seclusion. Every no you received was heaven's declaration. That's insufficient for what I've envisioned. Every closed door wasn't rejection. It was redirection. And here's wisdom rarely shared. When the divine seems silent, often it's because creation is occurring at such an extraordinary level. It requires protection from premature exposure. What felt like abandonment was divine incubation. You weren't stuck. You were being strategically positioned for something eyes haven't witnessed, ears haven't heard, and human minds cannot fully conceptualize. But now the preparation concludes. Chosen one. What was delayed approaches swiftly, but it won't manifest as originally envisioned. No, it arrives. Multiplied, elevated. Overflowing beyond what you could have requested when first seeking it. That position you believed you missed. Now you're being called to lead, not merely participate. That relationship that disintegrated, now divine timing, aligns you with souls who honor your purpose, not just your presence. The resources once withheld, now they flow toward you because you've proven faithful through fire. Remember this eternal principle. The divine doesn't simply restore what disappeared. It resurrects it, transformed, magnified, perfected. So if you remain in that waiting season, lift your gaze. The delay was never deviation. It was divine design. Every moment of silence represented heaven whispering, "Patience, I'm crafting something transcendent." And when manifestation occurs, no force will be required, no desperate pursuit necessary. It will align because it was always destined for you. You'll enter spaces where you belong, not as a visitor, but as the authority. Chosen one. Honor the waiting season, for what approaches is so glorious, so perfectly aligned, that retrospection will reveal, now I comprehend why divine timing was essential. When fulfillment arrives, doubt dissolves, struggle ceases, explanation becomes unnecessary. It resonates, it harmonizes, and your spirit recognizes this. This is what heaven was preparing throughout the waiting. Consider this final reflection. Can you trust the timing of a universe that perceives what remains hidden from your view? Because if you can, then prepare yourself. The waiting season concludes. The appointed time has arrived. And what enters your experience now will transform every tear, every prayer, every moment of questioning into profound meaning. Now, let's journey deeper. Understanding why you waited represents merely the beginning. Next, we unveil how those hidden seasons weren't limitations. They were forging you into something invincible. Section 3. Hidden Transformation. The power forged in darkness. Chosen one. Let's examine the chapters no one witnessed. The seasons when you weren't celebrated, you were concealed. When each step required extraordinary effort. When you awakened wondering, is there purpose in this pain? Those around you perceived only your struggle. But heaven recognized you were being transformed. You weren't disintegrating. You were being reconstructed in silence, in secrecy, in sacred spaces beyond human understanding. Let me ask you something profound. Have you recognized patterns in your challenges, battles that seemed meaningless until revelation came later? That's because chosen one. You weren't merely enduring hardship. You were being tempered by it. Every rejection, not just disappointment, but spiritual refinement. Every abandonment, not desertion, but divine repositioning. Every private tear, not wasted emotion, but a seed of profound wisdom, a seed of unshakable resilience, a seed of inevitable triumph. The world perceived mere survival, but you were undergoing specialized training for dimensions most will never access. Because here lies the truth few embrace. Authentic power isn't developed beneath spotlights. It's forged in darkness. While others chased applause, you learned stability when no recognition came. While they sought external validation, you developed capacity to discern truth amid deafening noise. You mastered navigation through darkness, rising without acknowledgement, maintaining faith when everything suggested surrender. Consider this profound insight. Every heartbreak you endured, it expanded your capacity for compassion. It taught you emotional depth without destruction. Every rejection, it refined your focus. It forced internal examination, aligning you with purpose rather than approval. Those silent seasons, they purified your intentions. They dissolved dependency on external affirmation, anchoring you in unshakable identity. Chosen one. Those who walked away. They weren't your loss. They were your liberation. The divine removed what your destiny couldn't sustain. Their absence wasn't punishment. It was your awakening. During your darkest moments, when others saw defeat, heaven witnessed formation. You learned spiritual warfare, to worship through weeping, to maintain faith without applause, without acknowledgement, without comfort. And therein true power emerged. Do you now understand that the silence contained purpose? It was sacred. You weren't forgotten. You were protected, shielded by heaven, while the divine perfected what the world wasn't prepared to witness. Had your revelation come prematurely, your light would have been mishandled, your calling misinterpreted, your essence forced into constraints too limiting for your destiny. So you remained in the refiner's fire. Not for destruction, but for purification, for removal of everything misaligned with your divine purpose. And now behold your transformation. You carry depth impossible to fabricate. Wisdom never handed to you, but earned through valleys of shadow. Strength forged through countless nights of unseen tears, and days when surrender seemed easier than persistence. Yet you persisted. You were emptied, so the divine could fill you with sacred instruction. You were tested, so you could stand in authority. You were stretched, so your capacity could contain the blessings now approaching. Chosen one. You weren't being punished. You were being positioned. Positioned to break generational patterns, positioned to transform atmospheres upon entry, positioned to embody wisdom that cannot be taught, only lived. And now your presence carries weight. Your words contain quiet power. Your discernment functions with precision, because your vision has been clarified through suffering. Consider this final reflection. Can you recognize now that what nearly destroyed you actually constructed the version of yourself that cannot be defeated? Because that's your evolution. A vessel of divine wisdom, a force of light formed in darkness, a manifestation of what heaven creates when no human witnesses the process. The world remained unaware, but now they shall witness. Because your season of concealment has concluded, and your season of revelation begins. Everything you believed wasted, the seemingly lost time, the unwitnessed tears, the relentless trials have become the unshakable foundation of your legacy. You were never buried, chosen one. You were planted. And now it's time to flourish, unapologetically, powerfully, visibly. So never diminish yourself. Never mute your brilliance to accommodate discomfort. You endured the refining fire. Now emanate its light. As we continue this journey, understand this fundamental truth. The preparation is complete. Now comes the restoration. In our next revelation, we'll explore how everything rightfully yours returns to your possession but magnified. Remain present. Chosen one. Your restoration narrative just begins to unfold. Section 4. The Magnificent Return. Divine upgrades beyond imagination. Chosen one. There exists a pivotal moment in every sacred journey when the cosmic scales begin to shift. You've endured seasons watching treasures disappear, relationships once cherished, opportunities earnestly sought, serenity fought desperately to maintain. It seemed existence continually extracted, taking and taking, until you questioned if emptiness had become your permanent state. But receive this revelation with absolute certainty. What disappeared from your experience was never your story's conclusion. It was the divine setup for your greatest restoration. Because when the divine restores, it never returns what was lost in its original condition. Instead, it multiplies it. It elevates it. It infuses renewed vitality into what appeared lifeless. Let's speak honestly. There were moments you questioned if wholeness would ever return. After the devastating betrayals, after the heartbreaking rejections, after pathways closed without explanation, you silently wondered, is this my permanent reality? Am I destined for perpetual lack? But what remained hidden from your awareness was that beneath visible circumstances, the divine orchestrated a reversal so profound it would silence every doubt ever harbored. Consider this perspective. What if everything that departed from your life was never meant for permanence because something exceptional awaited its appointed time? That relationship that shattered your trust, it wasn't your final experience of connection. It cleared sacred space for communion that honors your essence, one that breathes life into your purpose, one that walks alongside you, never overshadowing you. That opportunity that chose another, that pathway that remained blocked. It wasn't rejection, it was redirection toward something you're meant to create, not merely contribute to. Chosen one. This marks the season where pursuit of what was never meant to carry your destiny ends. This is where you step into divine ownership of your sacred time, your creative energy, your unique gifts, and your celestial assignment. Let's address something even deeper. The peace, stolen while you navigated survival, while you fought invisible battles beyond human comprehension. That peace returns now, but not as a fragile whisper. It returns like a mighty current, steady, unstoppable, abundant. You'll discover groundedness previously unknown, centeredness, clarity, anchored in stability, unaffected by external conditions or opinions. And what about the seasons you believed wasted time invested in misaligned relationships, in environments that depleted you, restricted by fear, confusion, or divine timing? The divine remembers these too. Recall the ancient promise, I will restore to you the years the locusts have devoured. Not moments, not fragments, but years, chosen one. You aren't receiving mere portions of your life returned. You're experiencing the fullness of everything lost, refined, and multiplied abundantly. When divine restoration manifests, it never resembles what disappeared. It manifests as what you were always destined for, but exceeding your boldest imagination. This explains why certain elements couldn't remain, why specific individuals needed to depart, why particular doorways needed to close. Because had they persisted, you would have accepted less when heaven prepared you for abundance. Let me speak this directly to your spirit. You aren't returning empty-handed. You're returning with divine treasure. But this treasure transcends material wealth. It runs deeper. It represents wealth impossible to steal again. You return carrying refined discernment, unshakable joy, impenetrable boundaries, expanded vision, and peace surpassing human understanding. Everything returning to you now arrives transformed. Your healing penetrates deeper than the wounds. Your joy outlasts memories of suffering. Your connections manifest with greater purity, rooted in authenticity, never convenience. And here's a profound revelation. This isn't merely restoration, it's resurrection. The divine breathes life into dimensions you believed permanently lost, dreams buried beneath exhaustion. They reawaken, opportunities you believed forever lost. They circle back, but this time, you step into them fully prepared, completely empowered. Because now you recognize your true identity. You understand what you carry, and you'll never permit anyone or anything to diminish that awareness again. Chosen one. Your narrative isn't defined by what vanished. It centers on how the divine returns it, enhanced according to sacred design, in perfect timing for ultimate glory. Consider this final reflection. Are you prepared to receive blessings so perfectly aligned with your purpose that you'll finally comprehend why everything unfolded precisely as it did? Because that represents your current position, on the threshold of a season where everything taken returns in a form that will transform years of sorrow, not because they lacked significance, but because what approaches will far outweigh the suffering. This is your divine restoration, not merely to previous conditions, but to what was always destined for you. Now, let's journey deeper. Understanding restoration itself represents one dimension, but comprehending the cosmic laws, guaranteeing your compensation. That's transcendent revelation. Remain present, chosen one. In our next revelation, we uncover why heaven doesn't simply restore, it compensates with divine interest. Trust that this wisdom will transform everything. Section 5. Divine Compensation Laws. Why you're owed abundance. Chosen one. There's a fundamental truth you must comprehend. The spiritual realm operates on different principles than the physical world. In earthly systems, when something disappears, you're advised to accept the loss, to find closure, to move forward. But in divine economics, justice functions according to higher principles. You see, there exists a law, a cosmic, immutable principle woven into spiritual reality itself. This sacred law declares when the enemy steals from a divinely chosen being, restoration isn't sufficient. Sevenfold repayment becomes mandatory. If a thief is caught, he must pay back 7 times what he stole. Proverbs 6:31. Allow this revelation to penetrate your consciousness. You haven't merely endured loss. You've activated a divine requirement for supernatural compensation. Every silent tear, every betrayal endured, every opportunity suddenly withdrawn from your grasp. The divine has maintained perfect record. While you questioned if anyone witnessed your suffering, heaven maintained flawless accounting. And now the spiritual thief stands exposed. Those unseen attacks, the subtle manipulation, the hidden deception, years wasted in confusion, emotional devastation caused by those presenting themselves as allies while secretly depleting you, all has been unveiled. When exposure manifests in spiritual dimensions, compensation isn't optional, it's cosmic law. Consider this profound question. Have you been expecting mere restoration to former conditions? Or are you prepared for advancement far beyond what disappeared? For this transcends simple restoration. This represents supernatural elevation into your destiny. When the divine compensates, it never simply replaces it, multiplies. You're not returning to previous levels. You're being catapulted forward into dimensions previously unimaginable. Consider this perspective. The enemy believed he was destroying your future, but he merely triggered a kingdom transaction where every moment of suffering became spiritual currency, and now heaven releases payment with compound interest. This explains the imminent manifestation of blessings across every dimension of your existence. Your provision, your relationships, your mental clarity, your creative expression, your divine purpose, even your generational impact, because the divine isn't creating mere equilibrium. It's demonstrating what manifests when a chosen one maintains faithfulness, even when everything attempts to destroy their spirit. Let me speak with absolute clarity. This isn't karma. This isn't casual, reaping what you sow. This transcends that principle. This is kingdom justice. Karma operates randomly, but divine compensation functions intentionally. It's not coincidence, it's covenant. When you maintained heart purity, when you rejected bitterness, when you chose forgiveness over vengeance, You aligned yourself with a spiritual principle that cannot fail. Heaven defends its chosen vessels, and you, chosen one, are about to witness how that defense manifests. Consider this powerful reflection. Can you handle receiving blessings that defy logical explanation to those who witnessed your suffering? Because that approaches swiftly. You'll enter environments where your name was once dismissed and receive. Section 6. Public Vindication. Divine Declaration before witnesses. Chosen one. Certain victories were never meant to remain hidden. There exists divine purpose behind your restoration, occurring visibly. There's sacred intention behind your blessings, your elevation, being witnessed by those who once doubted, dismissed, and even actively opposed you. When the divine moves powerfully through a chosen one's life, it becomes a public declaration of heaven's faithfulness. Consider this timeless promise. You prepare a feast for me in the presence of my enemies. Psalm 23:5. This isn't poetic symbolism. This represents a covenant promise. The divine doesn't elevate you for vengeance purposes. Elevation serves as demonstration, to reveal to all, particularly those who attempted your destruction, that divine hand has guided you throughout your journey. Reflect deeply, chosen one. Remember moments they mocked your divine vision, times they whispered about your temporary setbacks, seasons when you became the subject of cruel judgment, the target of jealousy, the one they dismissed before your journey had properly begun. They misinterpreted your silence as weakness. They mistook your patience for defeat. They assumed your quiet endurance indicated spiritual depletion. But what remained hidden from their understanding was that while they anticipated your downfall, heaven orchestrated your glorious elevation. Consider this profound question. How will you carry your spirit when divine blessing manifests before those who attempted to break you? Because that moment approaches with certainty, and it will not be subtle. Your adversaries receive front-row positions, not through their worthiness, but because the divine intends them to witness authentic favor in manifestation. This transcends revenge. This embodies revelation. It demonstrates to the world that no weapon fashioned against you prospered, that every deception, every betrayal, every attempt to derail your purpose failed completely. Not because you engaged in human conflict, but because you stood in divine truth and allowed heaven to fight on your behalf. Chosen one, you need not explain your survival methods. You need not justify your elevation process. They cannot comprehend it because they remained absent during your private battles. They missed witnessing nights of tearful prayers, days when continuing forward required supernatural strength. They will observe the manifestation, yet never comprehend the sacred process. This requires your acceptance. Because your restoration isn't designed to prove human opinions wrong, it demonstrates that divine wisdom remains perpetually right. Right in choosing you, right in preserving you, right in preparing you for this appointed hour. You'll enter environments where your contributions were once dismissed, not seeking validation, but carrying divine authority. You'll receive supernatural favor where doors once remained firmly closed, not through forced entry, but because the divine personally unlocked them. And those who believed they triumphed during your struggles, they have no choice but witness your divinely orchestrated elevation, gracefully, powerfully, without bitterness, without human boasting. Receive this liberating truth. Vindication arrives not through human words, it manifests through divine demonstration. You require no announcement of breakthrough. You need not respond to past doubters. When divine blessing manifests, it communicates more powerfully than human language ever could. They will question, How did they endure such opposition? How do they stand with such confidence now? How did their path transform from obscurity to abundance? The answer remains gloriously simple. God accomplished it. Not random fortune, not human connections, not manipulation, but pure, undeniable, supernatural favor. Chosen one. This represents the beauty of surrendering authorship of your story. The very individuals who believed they witnessed your conclusion will witness your divine rebirth. But receive this crucial wisdom. Guard your heart meticulously when elevation manifests, and it will maintain humility. Preserve purpose, focus, because your elevation transcends personal validation. It serves as living testimony that heaven remains in the restoration business, that divine protection covers chosen vessels, that no scheme, betrayal, or attack overrides heavenly purpose. Consider this final reflection. Can you steward public blessing without yielding to human temptation to declare, "I told you so"? Because authentic strength isn't displayed through revenge. It manifests through spiritual maturity, through recognition that divine justice embodies perfection and heavenly timing reflects divine wisdom. So when doors previously closed suddenly open wide, when your name circulates in environments once inaccessible, when opportunities arrive that no human power can obstruct, simply receive with gratitude. Not because you've defeated opponents, but because you've overcome with grace, with steadfast faith, with divine alignment. Chosen one, let them observe, let them ponder, let them witness the power of a life surrendered to heavenly purpose. Because your existence transcends mere survival. It embodies kingdom impact. And as we progress forward, something even greater awaits your understanding. This restoration represents merely the beginning. Now you step into the realm of divine overflow, where blessing not only meets your needs, but transforms you into a channel of blessing for countless others. Remain present. For in our final revelation, we'll unveil how heaven's abundance isn't merely returning to satisfy your needs. It arrives to create supernatural overflow.